Hello and welcome to the Talking City podcast from the Manchester Evening News. I'm today's host, Rich Fay, joined as always by Chief City writer Simon Bajkowski. Am I butchering your name again? We had a chat before we came on air saying...
Yeah, it was a different attempt that time, but you know.
What do you want? Okay, Bajkowski.
I'm used to a variety of pronunciations, so I'm quite easy about it, to be honest.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that sort of delayed the start of the pod.
I once went on 5 Live post for like a 5-minute chat, and I would say the first 3 minutes of it were the presenter getting the name wrong and then trying to get it right again.
Is this giving you flashbacks?
Yeah, it is. It's quite traumatic, really.
I'm sorry. Well, thank you very much for this counselling episode of Talking City podcast. On today's episode, we'll look at the January transfer window and, of course, what happened at the Premier League over the weekend. But there's only one place to start. Omar Berrada's late audition for Series 3 of The Traitors. Simon, how was that Saturday night for you then? Because it dropped 5-6 o'clock, did it?
Yeah, it was about 6:10. Very caught me unawares, I would say. And then out of the blue, it sort of exploded and was quite lively for about 20 minutes and then sort of simmered down again. But yeah, huge story. United taking one of the most senior executives at City. And yeah, we don't really see those moves very often. We don't see many people sort of crossing the divide between the clubs. You see it a bit more in kind of backgroundy roles, but I suppose Omar's was a bit of a background role, but he was also a prominent figure of the senior leadership team. So a huge statement of intent from United and kind of a recognition that City have a lot of very good operatives. If one of them who hasn't been CEO at City is going to be CEO at United, so a big promotion for him.
Of course, United stole Harry Maguire, stole Alexis Sanchez from the clutches of City. Berrada, though, is someone who is highly regarded, isn't he? And it does look like quite a coup from United. They're sort of certainly portraying it from that point of view. I mean, if we were just to get into the basics of Omar Berrada, I mean, there were lots of sort of profile pieces written about him, obviously on Saturday night, quite hastily. Who is this guy? What does he do? I mean, in essence, what was his role and what is his role? Because obviously this is for the summer, isn't it, that he will actually be making the move to United, not immediately. But what has he been tasked with at City?
Yeah, it's amazing how many people have become experts in what he's done and what he's doing, despite having never heard of him before. Saturday night, I think. Yeah, I think some at City will have heard of him, may have heard of him, but he was quite in the background. He sort of came to prominence as director of partnerships for quite a few years, so he was involved in a lot of commercial deals. And then he has moved on to become Chief Operating Officer in charge of football. It's quite a big deal. Sounds a big deal in charge of football. But it basically meant he kind of worked directly under Cheeky Begiristain, the sporting director, and Ferran Soriano, the CEO. So he was involved in kind of still, the financial side of things, but also how the financial side played in the transfer market and what scope it gave Cheeky Begiristain to do his job. And he would also help out Cheeky Begiristain sort of in the market. So, I think it's a stretch to say that Omar led the pursuit and capture of Erling Haaland, but he was certainly heavily involved in the deal with Cheeky.
So would he sort of be the guy who it has to sort of reinforce? Because we know that City have this reputation of not overpaying for players and for being very strict with their sort of wage demands and with contract renewals. Would he sort of be not one of the enforcers on that, but is he someone sort of reminding them of the financial aspect quite a lot? And was he sort of ultimately, I mean, yeah, how much say did he have sort of in things? Did he have much power?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, he was under sort of Cheeky Begiristain and Ferran Soriano, but he also kind of helped to bridge those two departments, because you sort of essentially football and business are two very different entities, even though it's the same club. So Omar would help kind of the money that City had, help make sure that City got the best value. And, you mentioned sort of United beating them to Harry Maguire and Alexis Sanchez. Omar will have been part of the team that decided not to pay for Harry Maguire because it was too expensive. Coming up with these strict valuations for players that City have in the market and deciding what is value for their money and what isn't. So he didn't have as much power as Ferran Soriano. He didn't have as much power as Cheeky Begiristain. But again, I've seen, a few things from City fans saying like, Omar wasn't one of the big five, which again didn't exist before Saturday night, but is seemingly Soriano, Begiristain, Guardiola, Khaldoon Al-Mubarak and the Sheikh. So yeah, he wasn't part of the big five, but he was probably number 6.
Yeah, he's part of the big 6, but not the big 5. So
yeah,
that's how you want to look at it, doesn't it?
Does that make him regards. Tottenham in that scenario?
Yeah, or he's one of those sort of Martin O'Neill's Aston Villa, maybe, who used to sort of flirt with it quite regularly. I mean, that is obviously maybe going to be the narrative for some City fans. Obviously, they want to move on quickly from him. But, you've got to look at how City have really transformed as a club since he arrived as well, because it's not just that they're the best in class on the pitch, they are also best in class off the pitch as well, aren't they? So a big part of that will be down to his commercial growth, what they've done just to build the brand and get that global exposure. Because I do think sometimes that, okay, maybe if you've supported City for a long time, you don't always see it as much, but you will have seen it as well, Si, going around the world to watch Man City. They have become a behemoth now, and I really don't think it'll be long before City are. I know they'll always push numbers and social digits and say, look, we're the biggest club in the world, but legitimately, City are very much going to be like, I know it's tedious, but like Manchester United were in the sort of early 2000s, where everyone on the planet almost knew who they were as a club. Omar played a big part in making City, or putting City on the pathway to that.
Yeah, and also, United are always sort of not mocked, but it's kind of like, United getting like a noodle partner in South China and everything, like all those little deals that make a big difference. And City have kind of done a lot of those deals. And I think, sometimes United have been proud to say, oh, we're the biggest spenders in the transfer market. And I think under the Glazers, it was kind of seen as like a badge of honor of, how well the Glazers were doing, that they were spending all this money. But, if you're spending it on, I don't want to say rubbish, but if you're not getting any returns from your spending, then it's not only pointless, it's counterproductive. So, while Omar Berrada has been at City, he's been part of one of probably the best well-run recruitment team in the game. You look at the signings they've made, you look at the signings they haven't made. It's hard to think of many misses at all, really. For 6-7 years, the entirety of Guardiola's reign. So, if Berrada is CEO, he will have power over the commercial to do more commercial deals and to get better value for United from those deals. But he will also have a say in sort of the money, because it's kind of a myth that Pep always gets what he wants, because there are plenty of times when the people in charge of the money at City turn around to him and say, no, you can't have Alexis Sanchez, no, you can't have Fred, no, you can't have Harry Maguire, and etc., etc. So it's about kind of responsible spending, I suppose.
As well, I guess, there is knowing which players you can maybe break the budget on if you had to, and ones who have a ceiling and a limit that you should be restricted to. Interestingly enough, if you go through Omar's social media activity, he has shared articles titled "Manchester United, how did they get into this mess?" He's also shared an article called "Reports Claim Manchester United Overpaid by £24 million for Angel Di Maria." And he also shared an article called "Quietly, Man City are beating United at the Generation Game." Now he's got to try and get United back on track. I suppose the question for you, Si, with your insider information, how was this received at City's end? Do they see it as a big loss, or are City going to do what they do best and move on and replace like they tend to do?
I mean, it was quite a bullish response from City. Their whole system is built on not being dependent or over-reliant on any one individual. When Pep goes, we all expect a drop. They are working to make sure that whoever they bring in has as little a drop as possible. Omar will be missed. And, I don't think it was a decision he took easily. City will miss him, but at the same time, they've kind of made a habit of replacing people who were very important to the business, whether that's on the pitch, from your sort of Agueros and Harts and companies and everyone like that, or key members of staff off it who choose to go elsewhere. So he will be missed, but the message was very much that, this will not change anything in the way that City go about the business. And, they still have Bajkowski and Soriano as the sort of figureheads in each department. And these are the guys that, everyone around the world knows in those respective parts of their industry. So I don't think we'll see too much change. But, if anything, it's a warning for City that United are not messing around. I sort of didn't think we'd see the day where United fans would be celebrating taking a City COO, but there we are. And he's a great appointment, and he should do very well for them if he's in the right structure, because he's shown what he can do at City. But at the same time, City will move on without him because they've got very good people as well.
Yeah, I do think that some United fans just expect that they're going to start playing tiki-taka football and scoring goals for fun because Omar Berrada's arrived. I mean, City still have the best manager, the best squad in world football. It's not as easy as that. But like you said, it is a warning. It is maybe an indication that, look, City are dominant in the Premier League in Europe and in Manchester right now, but United will maybe not be going full Rio Ferdinand saying we're back, but they will be saying, look, we are, as a club, certainly making those moves to try and put rights to wrongs, because there's been a lot of issues and City have been in a great position to take advantage of that as well. I suppose the question, Si, from both camps would sort of be, why would he leave City then? I mean, I know there'll be conspiracy theorists saying he's jumping while he can, but there'll be lots of other people who are saying, look, maybe he just wants a different challenge, and maybe even he does want to go to a club where he maybe gets a bit more attention, a bit more in the limelight, a bit more authority, because as he said, he wasn't one of the big five at City, was he? So at United, he can be.
Yeah, is it Safari you have a big five? I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I saw him described in one report as one of the best CEOs in the world, which is quite incredible considering he's never been a CEO at City, but the work he has done has been very good. And yeah, I just think, if you are in a position where you're sort of key to an organization near the top of it, but directly below, the main two people whose jobs you might be able to do, do you wait until June 2025 if the end of Pep Guardiola's contract sees the end of Soriano and Bajkowski, which there's no indications that there will. Soriano and Bajkowski were in Manchester long before Pep, and it may well go on beyond him. So, or if a big opportunity comes up to take charge of a club who, again, is it too much to describe United as a sleeping giant? They've got so much more potential than they are showing, I suppose. And if you get a call from Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos and they sell this exciting project to you and say, you can be number one, you can be CEO, and you can get, a big promotion, and you don't have to move house or anything like that. You can stay exactly where you are. And the ins and outs of the league in which you're working in, and the transfer market in which you are operating in across the globe. And sponsorship deals and what is market value and where you can make sort of those, I don't want to say marginal gains, but marginal gains, then maybe it makes sense. There'll be plenty of City fans, I'm sure, upset that someone can have worked at City for a decade and then just switched to United. But, you've got a guy who is someone who enjoys taking risks, and he is a businessman at the end of the day, and he's seen a business opportunity and he's gone for it.
Yeah, I guess ultimately, even no matter what happens, he's a lot more well known now than he was last week. So that's already sort of played
Just
off.
Look at his Twitter followers, yeah.
Just that's all that matters. And Man United will tell you that trophies in the cabinet, they're 10 a penny. But if you're the biggest team on social media, you're doing everything right. I suppose maybe cynical, maybe, I don't know, maybe just trying to join dots that aren't their side. But is there a concern that, just even from sort of, would I say sporting integrity or whatever, that does he know City's secrets? Does he know inside information that, maybe will go to United's aid? Surely he could at least arrive at Old Trafford and say, these are the players City are looking at.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be, a number of things in his exit that mean that he's not able to simply hand over City's blueprint. And the other thing is that, the City, you can't, as Pep says often, you can't just copy and paste. The City blueprint is kind of pretty unique to City. You see people, individuals, sort of players and otherwise, leave the club and don't tend to have much success elsewhere, because it is a very unique, and I know I keep contradicting myself because unique can't be pretty unique or very unique, but there aren't many places in the world in sort of various times. I feel like Barcelona was one when Pep was there.
Yeah, it's simple enough to say, play tiki-taka football, score loads of goals.
Yeah. And even now, since Guardiola came to English football, he has changed the way a lot of teams play right down the pyramid, and some do it really well and some do it terribly. And also, like anything, it takes time. Like Bournemouth at the start of the season under their new manager were pressing horribly, and then it clicked and suddenly they're really good. United were really good for 45 minutes against Crystal Palace, weren't they? Then,
really good.
Less
it's also
good.
like this season and last season with the box midfield and seeing what City did there. Loads of teams tried to implement it. But unless you've got a John Stones, putting a centre back in midfield doesn't work for you. So there's lots of imitators, aren't there?
Yeah, I think the concern for City is that they are losing a very experienced operator and someone who was really good at their job. And it's, in a way like losing Ilkay Gundogan. Like, how do you replace him? Not easily, because you can buy players who are similar, you can appoint people who are similar, but they don't have the experience of the system and the experience of kind of the City environment.
You can replace him as a footballer, but not a person, can't you?
Yeah. And it's easier with off-field thing. And it's the same that, City have very successfully replaced a lot of people. That would suggest that the system is very good in its design for that. It doesn't mean it's fail-safe. So you can't always win everything. And, they get a lot of credit for not signing Harry Maguire, for instance, because they wouldn't go up to 80 million. They'd only go to 75, which is fine and ultimately the right decision. But if you the big reason why they lost the league title to Liverpool that year was because they didn't sign a centre-back that summer. So it was fine to have those values. And over time, people look back and think, oh, imagine if they'd signed Harry Maguire. But you also think, well, imagine if Harry Maguire had come to City and trained under Guardiola, we'd now be talking about him as, as a better centre-back than people now talk of him as. So I think with Berrada going, you sort of there's no doubt that it is a loss for City, and the question for them is, can they do what they've done countless times before by, making that loss so small that you don't really notice it?
Did you have him down as 100% faithful?
I thought he was on track to get a higher job at City as long as he stayed around. So, he had my seal of approval for what it was worth. But,
he would have stabbed you in the back as well.
But, he's... I think the way that people at City are looking at it, again, I think quite bullishly, is that he has joined a completely different project. And so he's not part of he's not an important part of a really well-oiled machine. He's a more important part of a machine that's still in its creation and nobody really knows what it looks like, because
some would say it's a machine that was sort of outdated 20 years ago, like a VHS or something.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of maybe they're moving into the DVD range now. As much as it's sort of like joining a direct competitor, and United will be sort of going for similar commercial deals and players in the market, it's sort of you're selling two very different projects to sponsors and to players.
Yeah, well, ultimately he's joining a team that probably won't be in European competition next season, and who, although they're making strides forward, will still be way behind what City have done in the last decade. But that's probably enough on Omar for now and for part one.
We're not going to talk 115.
Do you want to talk 115?
Let's talk 115.
Okay, because producer said put on the notes, and I thought, do we really go into 115? I mean, you love it. Go on, Si.
I love it. Well, I got accused of only talking about 115 since Omar went to United, so that's...
Well, Omar leaving means, I'm not even going to joke about what it could mean, because I'll probably get clipped out of context, but there are the conspiracy theorists who say, well, Omar leaving can only mean one thing, can't it?
Yeah, well, the thing to sort of... from what I have taken from it and what people who've spoken to me about it, purely from what I know of what Omar has done, he is involved in the commercial activities that are being alleged to say have breached Premier League rules. So, he is one of the many people who will be culpable if City are found guilty of these really serious crimes. So, when City got exonerated by the Court of Arbitration for Sport in 2020, there was a selfie taken by City bosses that was very quickly deleted. He was on that selfie, so he's quite an important guy and had quite a big interest in what would happen to City at CAS. And the Premier League case, as far as we can tell, is very similar. So the fact that United have chosen this guy to appoint him as the first CEO, really, of the Ratcliffe regime would suggest that they're fairly confident that they won't be having to ask him to resign or sack him next year, probably when all the verdict comes out. You could say that maybe they're taking the view that they'll take him for what he's worth until 2025, and if City are found guilty, then they'll just get a new CEO. I would say, and you will know better than me, covering United a bit more than I do, it would go, the press coverage would be awful if they had to sack Berrada, let's say.
Yeah, well, it would undermine everything they've tried to do if they're acting like they've turned a corner, but they've not actually done background checks or fully sort of planned for the future. It would undermine the whole project.
You could also say, maybe they just don't think City will be punished for it, but you're not going to be punished for it if there's not enough evidence to punish you for it. So, I think you have to see, Berrada being a flagship signing for the Ratcliffe era as kind of indirect backing for City in their case against the Premier League, because United clearly aren't expecting blowback from appointing him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make a joke about it because it could be taken out of context. Are you all 115 out then? Is that you done?
Yeah. It was just like, it was very surprising that once again so many people are commenting on things that are like there in the cast verdict and the cast judgment, and people have like made their mind up, United fans, that he wasn't involved at all. And it's like, it is there in black and white.
Yeah.
Like, it's may not mention him by name, but you don't really have to look very far to see it. And this isn't to say either like, oh, he's a really bad guy, because City still maintain their innocence and say they've done nothing wrong. So, United have hired this guy because they think he's done a terrific job in business, surely, not because he's cheated. But it's just quite funny because United fans have been saying for ages about, City's success being down to cheating, and now they've hired someone who could be implicated in that if City are found to have cheated, despite the fact that they insist they're innocent. So it's, yeah, like I said, I think I am 115 out for now, but I'm sure we will go again when Everton get docked 50 points.
Yeah, if you can't beat them, join them, and you can join us for part 2 of the podcast after this short break. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast then from the Manchester United News. We're 115 out, we're Berrada out. We are Berrada out this summer as well at Man City. Then the Premier League at the weekend, convincing wins for Liverpool and Arsenal. I mean, I know there may be a perception that City will at some point just walk away like they do with their squad depth and the talent they have, but for the neutrals at least, it's looking pretty exciting again.
Arsenal kind of straight into it against Palace, big win. Liverpool had to fight for it at Bournemouth and really kind of struggled in that first half, but they picked themselves up, and 4-0 at Bournemouth is a really good result. City going there at the end of February and would sort of bite your hand off for a 1-0, let alone a 4-0. So it's shaping up to be very good, and Liverpool in particular look the team to beat. It's 5-point lead for them at the top now. City have a game in hand, but still Liverpool are looking like they could put something big together.
Do you have your own sort of gut instinct? Have you changed your mind at all? Were you very much of the thought, like I was, that City will just do what City do in the second half of the season, where they hit these unsustainable almost points tallies and they don't really drop a thing? Do you see it being as tight as ever? Another one of these titles that could go down to goal difference, could go down to the final day?
I think it'll be tight. I think, I don't know. I feel like a month ago, everyone had made up their mind and said, oh, it's the most competitive Premier League title race ever. Everyone can beat everyone.
Aston Villa are going to win it.
Yeah. They beat City and Arsenal in a week. And now I'm looking at it and I sort of totted up the numbers this morning, and I think Liverpool can still get 99 points and City can still get 97, and I'm kind of wondering, is it going to be another kind of pull away from both of those teams and sort of a high quality title race? And Arsenal, I think, can probably get to similar, maybe 97 like City, but I'm expecting it to be between City and Liverpool, because those two teams really seem to have the momentum and the quality. And, Liverpool have been getting wins all season, sort of coming from behind, and then to win 4-0 without Salah and Alexander-Arnold is another kind of real show
Statement,
of intent. Yeah. So it feels at the minute like it might be another City-Liverpool shootout.
Mentioned there a team winning without some of the best players. For Man City, John Stones getting close to his return. What's the latest on him then?
Yeah, he's back in training. He did his first session at the weekend. I don't think he did a full session, but it was at least some of it, which is good news because he'd kind of been slated in for a return the end of Jan. They've got Tottenham away in the FA Cup and then Burnley at home in the league. So yeah, maybe Burnley might be the one to target for Stones. Akanji and Haaland might not be as quickly back. So yeah, still key players out for City, but I mean De Bruyne is still going well and looking like he's not suffered any real repercussions to his comeback. Training well out there in Abu Dhabi where they are for a week. So it will be good for City to get Stones back because they're just a better team with him in it. But obviously still waiting on Akanji and the big one in Haaland.
I guess as well as the cautionary aspect you have to take with it as well, because I mean I'm just looking at the fixture list now. Obviously, like you said, Spurs on Friday night, but from then on you play Wednesday against Burnley, then you've got Brentford on the Monday, Everton that weekend, and the week after it's Copenhagen and Chelsea. Now there's a lot of games coming up, and you can't really be taking risks with players, can you? When there's so much more on the horizon already. And again, this is the sort of time of season where City's squad depth usually does. I know City will always downplay their strongest squad as they say it is, but it is one of those aspects where you put someone like Oscar Bob can come off the bench and do a job for you. You've got all these players who will improve you. So maybe don't need to rush it back on terms of the injury front, but obviously it'd be a boost when City have them available. I mean, you talk about sort of running themes on this podcast. It's the Kalvin Phillips klaxon. He's still here. City United haven't poached him.
He's still here. Yeah. It was funny. I saw a headline saying, West Ham showed against Sheffield United they need Phillips because there wasn't any control. And you sort of thought back to...
Is this the guy that Pep said thrives in the chaos?
Yeah. Doesn't play him precisely because he doesn't give them any control. He's still here. What date are we on? The 22nd of Jan, so the last 10 days of the window. We're still in a position where Phillips is expected to leave. West Ham are now the front runners to get him, but they've still got to sort out a deal with City. They just seem more amenable to that than Newcastle. But then Newcastle are in, about 24 hours ago, Newcastle was selling no one, and now everyone's one of their players has got a big money move away. So maybe they've got the money now and sort of fresh impetus to come back for Phillips. Ultimately he needs good months of playing regularly, and that's what he's asking anyone who wants to take him if they can guarantee him that. And I think West Ham with their issues can do.
How would it be viewed at City then, Si, if Phillips did just remain here? Would it not really change much? I mean, a wasted opportunity for the player?
That's kind of the I suppose a positive for him, but also damning of him that it wouldn't really make a difference to City whether he stayed or left. He is positive for him because he's such a good influence in the dressing room, and
you saw that at Newcastle as well. When the goal went in, I noticed his celebration on the bench and how much it meant to him. I was like, fair play. You could just sort of be sulking there, but he obviously is still a part of it.
Yeah, and he was, jumping on top of his teammates. He was hugging Pep at the end. So he is a full member of the squad. So, everyone would love to have him around for another 5 months or whatever's left in the season. It's just Pep's not going to play him. So if he wants to play, and he's also in a position where, Rico Lewis is going to be getting a lot more minutes than him, does he really want to sort of risk Southgate coming to City on the off chance he gets a game? And it's Rico Lewis, in fact, who runs the show, who's already on that England radar now. I think he just needs to move. And I'd said for ages he should have had a move lined up at the beginning of the window, but it's proved difficult with people sort of struggling or not being willing to match what City want for him, and sort of him not being able to knock that down enough. But he just needs to move if he wants to do what he said he'd do.
Yeah, especially like I said, with the European Championship coming up, it has to be something he has to force for himself, and maybe even I'm not saying drop to a level he wouldn't do anyway, because I said West Ham could be a good option for him, but you just need to force it out, because like you said, it's very damning that City would be quite all right to keep him as well. You shouldn't just sort of settle for that security, really, considering the pedigree of a player he was. I mean, it's very easy to forget how big a signing he was for City, isn't it? But, they fought hard to get him. They wanted him. I mean, I know you will have gone over it time and time again. I mean, do you just think he's been the wrong player at the wrong time for City? Or do you think he was just never the right guy to begin with?
Yeah, it's hard to say. We talk about the hit rate that Omar Berrada and Cheeky Begiristan have had. And Phillips is one of the most glaring misses, probably one of the only misses in the last 5 years, I'd say. But nobody really thought it at the time. Everyone said, oh, great signing, can be back up for Rodri and, more England internationals for the team. I think he just won England Player of the Year. And he's just not really risen to the challenge. He's not fit in. I can't remember him having a good game for City. So he's just and that as well goes back to the City kind of infrastructure and environment. Just some people just aren't made for it, and that doesn't make them bad players or anything like that. It just means they're not quite right for this particular almost unique club.
We spoke about that wider sort of machine when you spoke about Berrada, and it's the same in terms of the squad structure, isn't it? That sometimes like a less talented individual player will just be a better fit for what City need and what they do. And you've sometimes seen that with the players that Pep treasures the most. It's not always the most talented player in the squad who is a Pep player or who he absolutely adores. It's just someone who he can just rely on and just brings him that consistency.
Yeah, and you saw like Kovacic coming from City and just immediately settle. And his qualities of sort of being comfortable receiving the ball with his back to goal and turning and distributing are different from those of Phillips. Now, you might say why Phillips kind of hasn't, why did they sign him if he didn't have those qualities? I think there was a bit of, I'm not sure he was exactly the same player when he came back from his long-term injury at Leeds. But at the same time, you look at Núñez, who's not necessarily like playing every week, but when he comes on, he shows something a bit different with what he does, and it might not be what you expect him or what you expect of someone in his position when you've watched Gundogan for 7 years. But it is still something that is productive. Whereas, like I say, with Phillips, I don't know whether he's just sort of so out of, so sort of not as confident with having the ball so much, or
it's probably one of those things that feels like it snowballs as well. The longer he doesn't play, the less he has confidence, the more he overthinks things. And maybe when he knows it Leeds, he is the poster boy and he's just doing things without even thinking about it. It was just so natural to him. But there's so much more pressure and scrutiny at City. And the longer it goes on, there's even more pressure and scrutiny. It almost seems to have reached this breaking point where he can't be played because he's become a liability. And even when he plays, he's struggling to break that mold himself. He's almost trying too hard to do the basics at times that he can't do them. It just feels like he needs that clean break like City do.
Yeah, and it's rare to see Guardiola at such a loss. He just sort of genuinely feels like that he can't see how he fits into the team. And for a man who can play Fabian Delph at left back and come up with all these crazy scenarios, the fact that he can't play a midfielder in midfield is quite alarming. It's all gone horribly wrong.
Any other business you expect for the end of the window, or is it just a no?
They're gonna sign the Argentine, the Echeverri, for about 20 million, I think, but he will stay at River for at least 6 months. He's not going to be seen in Manchester for a while. But that, it will be a significant deal and a substantial deal, and it's City trying to sort of follow the Alvarez trail.
Yeah.
Not Alcatraz. Alvarez trail, and sort of unearth another South American gem for not very much money. So obviously he's
we
much
talk
younger.
about 115 and you throw Alcatraz in there. I mean, the Illuminati works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? I mean, fill in the gaps for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's all for today's podcast, isn't it? Si, thank you very much as always for joining us on the Talking City podcast.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much again to whoever you are and wherever you are. in the world. We will be back on Monday to look back at what happened in City's FA Cup clash with Tottenham and look ahead, like we said, to that game against Burnley next week. Thank you very much for joining us on the Talking City podcast. Please leave a review and subscribe if you haven't already. The video will be out on YouTube, probably on our social media platforms as well. Take care, and we'll see you again next week.